Well, good evening. Thank you, and thank you so much for coming out for what will hopefully be the start of something big and grand here in the area. This is an opportunity for us to all come together and to get engaged, get plugged in, and to find out what's going on in our local community. I'm June Jenkins. I am the founder and publisher of Noir Lifestyles, and we are so excited to host tonight's event in collaboration with our partner, the Collin County NAACP, members of the Collin County NAACP. Thank you so much. We're so excited to host tonight's event. And we want to start out, first of all, by, before we even get started, to give the owner, one of the owners of this establishment, Pure Social, an opportunity to come up and to greet us. And for us to thank him for opening his venue up to allow us to come in and to educate our community and make sure that we're engaged and involved. Today it's nonpartisan. We don't talk party. We talk issues that impact our community. And we want to thank Pure Social for understanding the importance of educating our community, being engaged, being involved, and being a venue where our community can come out and do the things that we need to do. They host so many wonderful events, and we want to thank them for all that they do in the community. So now we will have Mr. come up and introduce himself.
Hello everyone, welcome in to Pure Social. We appreciate your business, we appreciate your presence, we appreciate the opportunity to service you and to exceed your expectations. My name is Alvar Centers. I'm one of the partners for Pure Social. We've been around, we've been open now, November made 1 full year. And so we partnered with the city of Richardson. It's been a journey. We gotta say thank you to the city of Richardson for the partners and whatnot. Just want to say that one of our goals was not just to become a bar, a local restaurant. We wanted to be a partner with the community. And so Richardson has really embraced us. And so by them embracing us, we want to embrace you and invite you to come and participate with the city of Richardson and the good people of the Richardson area. So, but we want to say if you want to host an event with us, we'd love to have you. Just need a little bit of advance notice to properly prepare and staff up for it. But we are here for you, and hopefully you guys will be here for us. All right?
And for those of you that have boundaries like us, it's Richardson and it's in Collin County. So that's the scorecard. Yay! They're ranked. They just barely make the Collin County cut. So this is Collin County, and we're excited to have you in Collin County. So at this time, I am going to invite a member of our branch who has formerly been involved very deeply in the political scene around Collin County. We're going to ask Sheena King to come join us, and she's just going to give us some words, some wisdom, some knowledge. She's been around the block. She's a very well-known, engaged community advocate. So with that, we'll have Sheena. Oh, I forget. Sheena Flannery. Flannery, did I get that right? Flannery. She got married last year.
Thank you so much, Madam President. So, June is being very gracious and very kind and very humble right now. She does so much for this community. Yes. She needs a round of applause. Yeah, no words. So, you can call me whatever you want to call me. Okay. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out. This means a lot. This means that you are ready, you're engaged, you're fired up and ready to go. This means you understand what's on the line, what's important, and that is all that we're asking. We want people to be informed. We want you to know what's happening. We want you to be aware of all the resources. We want you to do your part at this time. Because we have talked before about what's happened in the past, but we can't change the past. All we can control is today. So be present, be available, be informed, stay engaged. Want to thank these candidates for coming out, and I know it's difficult. They have many miles to travel and many places to be, but they chose to be here tonight. And thank you guys for coming out to actually hear and listen and learn from them. So as June mentioned, we have early voting starting February 17th, and election day is March 3rd. So there's not a lot of time left. But we thank Pure Social for allowing us to have Monday Night Politics here for the next couple of Mondays to make sure. So make sure that you come back not only to hear the candidates today, but the candidates who come back next week and the ones after that. So stay informed, stay engaged, and make sure that you share not only with your inner circle, share it with your outer circle. We need as many people voting right now. Marching is great, voting is better. With that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Sheena. So tonight we're focused on judicial candidates on the ballot. And we're getting ready now to move into the candidate forum portion of the program. Tonight's conversation is guided by a lady whose career has spanned journalism, corporate leadership, and community service. Pamela Hart is a former newspaper and broadcast journalist and the first African-American to produce and anchor a regularly featured news show in Northeast Louisiana. Throughout her career, she's interviewed notable figures including Stokely Carmichael, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and former First Lady Barbara Bush. Pamela later brought her communication and leadership skills to a Fortune 500, Fortune 50 company, State Farm, where she served as an IT manager and led award-winning training initiatives, mentored future leaders, and helped guide major organizational transition. She's also the founder of Vision Forum, a communications and consulting firm focused on helping clients achieve phenomenal results. A graduate of University of Louisiana with degrees in journalism and psychology, Pamela continues to serve the community through scholarships, volunteerism, and leadership with organizations including Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, my home church, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and most importantly, she is the proud mother of 3 accomplished children. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for tonight, Pamela Hart.
Thanks, everyone, and I am a country girl, let me tell you. I'm going to leave this mic alone right now because it doesn't want to come out. But we're going to, let me get this 1 second. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being here for Get Plugged in Monday Night Politics. Get plugged in. This, let's say Monday Night Football, has nothing on this event tonight. Tonight's program is focused on candidates who will appear on the March 3rd, 2026 primary election ballot, including judicial and statewide offices. And I've met many of them. I hadn't met one of them. I tried to get to him, but he was making those rounds, and I'd love to see it. There's some heavy candidates here tonight, and I cannot wait until you get an opportunity to hear from them. So before we begin, again, we'd like to thank the community partners, the Collin County NAACP, and Joe Jenkins, and everyone associated with that organization. In addition, Pure Social Bar and Grill. We're just pleased to be here tonight. This is a beautiful establishment, and we will be back. We will be back. All right, here's how the format is going to go tonight. We'll have the candidates come up. Each will give a 2-minute introductory statement. That'll be followed by some questions from me. And if time allows, we'll have some questions from the audience as well. So we're going to allow the audience to ask questions. And we will ask that the candidates honor the time limit so everyone will have an opportunity to speak. So that's going to help us. And also, we're going to ask the audience to remain respectful during the program tonight, and we know that you can and you will, and so you're excited as we are. All right, at this time, let's introduce the candidates. Are you guys getting a lot of feedback from me on the mic? No. Okay. Let's introduce the candidates. We're going to have them come up and take a seat. First, we have candidate Nicholas Palmer, who's running for Justice, Place 8, for the 5th District Court of Appeals. Yes, nice to meet you, Nicholas. And we have Holly Taylor, who's running for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and this is a statewide position. Welcome, Holly. Tony Box, a name that I can't forget for some reason. Really cool. He's running for Texas Attorney General. Also, Maggie Ellis. Maggie is running for the Texas Supreme Court. As you can see, when I said heavy candidates, you will want to hear from them tonight. I'm excited, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get ready for the introductions. First, we will have Nicholas, let's go in this order, who will give his 2-minute introduction, followed by Holly, then Tony, and followed by Maggie.
Hello, good evening. My name is Nicholas Palmer, and I am running to be your next justice in Place 8 on the 5th Court of Appeals. I first have to say that I'm incredibly honored to be sharing the stage with these 3 titans who are running a statewide race. My race runs a mere 6 counties, but it does include all of Collin County, so I'm pleased to be here introducing myself to you. To know me and why I'm running for office is to know that I am passionate about 2 things, and that is my family and the rule of law. And those things are very interrelated for me personally. And that's because without our courts and without the rule of law, I wouldn't have the family that I have today. My spouse and I had to leave the state to get married because when we got married in 2014, it was not legal to get married in the state of Texas. After that, we had the privilege of adopting 3 children from the Texas foster care system. And standing in the courtroom, not as an advocate, but as a father that day, was very touching to me. I decided to enter the race this year because on the 5th Court of Appeals, your intermediate Court of Appeals, it's just under the Texas Supreme Court, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, we have 3 justices who are retiring. And I felt that at this critical time for our country and our state and our local communities, it was important that we had qualified candidates who are willing to step up, who would honor the rule of law. I am board certified in civil appellate law and labor and employment law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. I'm currently the lead appellate attorney for the 9th largest city in the United States. And so I am ready to step in and begin upholding the rule of law on day 1. And I will conclude by simply saying that as this is a nonpartisan event, judges in Texas run in partisan races, which raises some eyebrows. But once elected, I don't wear blue, I don't wear red, I wear black, and I will uphold the rule of law.
Hi, my name is Holly Taylor, and I am running for what I like to call the most important Texas court that most Texans have never heard of, and that's our Court of Criminal Appeals. What most people don't know is that Texas is one of only 2 states in the nation, along with Oklahoma, that have 2 Supreme Courts. So the Supreme Court that Justice Ellis is running for only handles civil appeals. The Court of Criminal Appeals is our top court in Texas for all criminal cases, everything from murders down to misdemeanor traffic offenses. But the court is considering on a regular basis issues that impact our constitutional rights profoundly. Things like the First Amendment right to free speech, separation of powers, and our right to due process of law. So it's super important, and its decisions set precedent that all the other courts in Texas have to follow. And I am running for this court because of my personal experience in my career. I've been practicing criminal law for over 25 years. I'm a criminal defense attorney now, but I spent over 17 years as a prosecutor in Travis County. And in that work, I prosecuted government corruption, I prosecuted civil rights violations, but mostly I prosecuted violent crime, working to stand up for victims and keep my community safe. But over the last 5 years doing that work in Travis County, I worked with the Conviction Integrity Unit in that county. And that's the entity that investigates wrongful conviction claims that are brought to it by entities like the Innocence Project. And they do DNA testing and scientific review and interview those witnesses who testified at trial and those who were never called to testify at trial. And when I entered into this work as a former prosecutor, I felt that we would not have any wrongful convictions because I felt we were doing our jobs. However, I was wrong. And through this important work, I discovered that we did have wrongful convictions. And unfortunately, I had the horrible realization that a few of them were cases that I had worked on. It was devastating to me, and I worked very, very hard fighting for justice for those people. And I'm proud to say that a few weeks ago, one of them was exonerated in Texas. But that work taught me that we have cracks in the foundation of our criminal justice system here in Texas. It's a good system, but we need to work to heal it. And that is why I am running for this important court. My name again is Holly Taylor, and I'm running for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals.
Hello, my name is Tony Box. Thank you all so much for coming here. I'll tell you a little bit about me, but before I do that, I want to share some news with you. Within the last week or so, we have been endorsed. There's only been 2 significant newspapers throughout the state of Texas that have endorsed candidates. It's the San Antonio News Express. About a week or so ago, they endorsed me out of the entire Democratic field. And recently, the Austin American Statesman came out with their endorsement, and they also endorsed me in our campaign out of all the Democrats running. And so we have a tremendous amount of momentum. Earlier today, not even an hour ago, I just appeared on Joy Reid. And so there's a lot of interest in this campaign. And so we are moving about the state and spreading our message. And now I'll tell you a little bit about me and why I'm running. I'm running to be the next Attorney General of the state of Texas for one reason, one overarching reason, and that is to serve the people of Texas. I am a career public servant. I went to Morehouse College. In my first week of college, my son is also a Morehouse man. And I got 2 other Morehouse men. So my first week, I signed up for the Army. I signed up for the ROTC and the Reserves. I spent my entire 4 years of college in those organizations. Immediately, I was commissioned into the Army. I was a tank commander. Years later, I was fortunate enough to go through the rigorous process of becoming a federal special agent of FBI, where I traveled all over the world. I was on the SWAT team. I went to New York after 9/11. And then years later, I became a federal prosecutor where I prosecuted cases. So I tell you all of that to say that I have a tremendous amount of experience. I am the only candidate in a race with that type of experience. And those 2 endorsements, they made the case for us. They articulated very well who was best capable based upon their service and based upon their career path. I am not a career politician, and I think that's a good thing. I bring a fresh perspective, and I bring a very unique background. I am a man of the people, and I always have been. So I'll tell you a little bit about why. Well, let me tell you this. When I was in church recently, somebody said to me, "Why are you serving? Or why are you running?" And I said, "Look, I've been blessed immensely, and I've been through a lot. And one thing I want to be is I want to be a blessing to other people. And how can I do that? The Attorney General is the highest and best use of my experience that I've done. And so my name is Tony Box, TonyBox. And my website is Tony Box for Texas. We tell people check the box for box. So you guys don't forget it. So please, I would ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I am I'm Justice Maggie Ellis. I currently serve on the Third Court of Appeals. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight to visit with you. Thank you for Pure Social for hosting. We had the tacos and the peach cobbler was amazing. So I'm running for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court because I want to bring balance and independence back to our courts. A little bit about me and my background, my experience. I grew up very transient and we were homeless when I was a child. I went to 8 elementary schools in 3 different states while we were in school. Sometimes we weren't. When I was 10 years old, my mom stopped taking us to school altogether. When I was 11 and a half, we were living in our car in New Mexico. I begged her to put me back in school. She drove me home to Texas, left me at a gas station 2 miles from my father's house with $5 and drove away. I didn't see her again for 12 years. When I was 22, I was a single mom with an infant, a 2-year-old, and I was raising my baby sister all by myself with no help from anyone. It took me 16 years to put myself through school. I got my associate's degree, and then my degree, my 4-year degree, my bachelor's. I was a teacher and a foster mom, and then I went to law school so I could be an advocate for kids and families who are like me and my siblings. I'm the only one of my 8 siblings who's ever attended university or graduated from college. When I got my law degree, I worked in 5 of the counties in the area that I now serve, which covers 24 counties. I represented and defended people at risk of losing their liberty, their homes, their children. I did that primarily on a pro bono and low bono basis. I tried to help and successfully started one pro bono clinic with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid to help individuals who could not have access to an attorney. 15% of Texans live at or below the poverty line. 25% represent themselves in family law cases. I was a prosecutor doing all of the diversion dockets for juveniles, and I'm the only female attorney in the entire state. I'm nationally certified in child welfare law and state board certified in juvenile law. I have handled thousands of matters in court from all sides of the docket. I bring tremendous legal experience to this seat, but I also bring a lived understanding that is experienced by so many everyday Texans who come before the court or who don't believe they have access to the court. The Chief Justice role that I'm running for is uniquely positioned to expand our access to justice initiatives. In the past year, indigent defense funding has been slashed. And so my hope is to bring that back and then to expand those programs for everyone. I would just be so honored to visit with you all if I haven't had the opportunity. I have business cards. They have my personal mobile number. I've handed that out to 18,000 people I serve. Anybody's welcome to call me. Nobody ever does. But I was telling this couple in back that I met this lady when I was knocking on doors. She now sends me really funny memes. We have put 10,000 miles on the truck, knocking thousands of doors. Our philosophy for the campaign for the seat I'm in now is that you can't serve people you don't see. And justice looks very different in every county, and we want to get to know people all across the state. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Testing. All right, let's give them a hand again for their introductory statements. They were very candid in terms of who they are, and we really like this. It is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we know the people we're voting for. Really quickly, I'm going to do this. How many of you out there have ever gone to the polls and voted for someone you did not know? That's pretty much all of us. And we never want to be in that position. We always have an opportunity. That's why it's wonderful that you all are here tonight to be here, to hear these candidates. It's one thing to read about them on paper, isn't it? It's an entirely different thing to hear them, to see them, to have the opportunity to ask questions as well. So with that, we're going to get started. Now, one of the first questions that we have deals with basically some of the things that you guys talked about tonight, but in 2026, public confidence in the justice system is essential. It always has been, and it's even more so now. What do you believe would most strengthen that trust, and how would you uphold it in the role that you're running for? So, public confidence in the justice system is essential. What do you believe most strengthens that trust, and how would you uphold it in this role? Let's start with Maggie. We'll go backwards this time.
So absolutely. Is that better? Absolutely. Public trust has completely, in the justice system, has completely eroded. And for many people, it was not there to begin with. So in order to build confidence in the courts, judges have got to be transparent. They have got to be open, available. Their rulings have got to be consistent. They have got to have, I was just talking with this wonderful woman, and we talked about Black and brown people are brought into the system disproportionately, and then when they're brought in, they have disproportionate outcomes. And it's incumbent upon judges to understand that when a case comes before them, that they see that I had a case where kids were brought in, 5 kids, they were just being little ding-dongs, driving around in golf courts, 5 kids. Only one of those kids came in to me, the one Hispanic kid. The 4 white kids were taken home. And so it is an awareness of non-suiting that case, finding justice for that child, and being consistent, being compassionate, having cultural competence, and making sure that people who come into your court know that.
So as I said earlier, I spent quite a bit of time in criminal law enforcement, first as an FBI agent, then as a federal prosecutor. So this is an area that I know well. And what needs to take place in order to build confidence in the criminal justice system is that people who are in the justice system, meaning the employees, the agents, the prosecutor, the judges, they need to understand, they need to be fair and equitable and transparent, as Maggie said, about everything that they do. One of the things that comes to mind is what's taking place in Minnesota. The way law enforcement has eroded the trust, not only in Minnesota, but nationwide. Those people take an oath, but they have disregarded that oath. I talked about it on Joy Reid today extensively. They have violated constitutional rights and civil rights by beating the stew out of people who simply are exercising their rights. First Amendment. What will increase confidence? These people need to be held accountable. First, they need to be trained. They need to be put out of Minnesota, trained. And then the ones who violate people's rights, they need to be held accountable. And that goes writ large across the criminal justice system. And so to the extent that people believe that they are unaccountable to anyone, whereas the government, the administration, claims that they have absolutely immunity, which is certainly not true. And I talked about that in many forums. But nonetheless, those are the things that I believe will increase confidence. Communities, no matter whether it's Black or brown communities or not, they want to trust law enforcement. But law enforcement has to be fair and do the right thing by the communities. They have to be of the communities, they have to be in the communities, they have to understand the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I failed to let the candidates know we're going to keep your comments to about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Great job. You guys are doing great.
So my name again is Holly Taylor, and through my personal experience working on civil rights cases and conviction integrity unit cases, I can tell you I 100% agree that we have a disproportionate impact on certain communities, and also that there is a lack of faith and confidence in the justice system right now. I think it's a sad thing because I think at root we have a great system. It's worth standing up for, and it's worth healing the system. but we're going to have to make an effort. And one of the ways we have to do that is we have to have judges who are willing to take risks. Judges are under a tremendous amount of pressure right now. They receive, in addition to public political pressure and commentary from leaders in this country and in this state, they have a 400% increase in threats of violence against them when they make decisions that certain groups and leaders disagree with. So it's hard for judges to do the work they need to do, but we need people who have the courage to stand up for the rule of law and to do that with transparency, impartiality, and integrity. I think that's critical, and that's one of the things that I plan to bring to the Court of Criminal Appeals. One of the things that I used to work for the court, that we used to do when I worked for the court, is we had a rules committee that had meetings that were open to the public, in which they could come and offer their thoughts about what the court was doing and things that it should do. They discontinued, for the most part, those public meetings. I plan to start them again when I join the court.
Thank you. Once again, I'm Nicholas Palmer, running for the 5th Court of Appeals. I agree with so much of what my fellow candidates have said, but I view this question a little bit differently in terms of how can we restore faith in our justice system. And as a judicial candidate, I am approaching it from the perspective of how can we restore faith in our courts. We are living in an increasingly politicized environment, and when not just in criminal matters, but civil matters, courts make decisions that don't go one way politically. People are viewing the courts as, didn't vote for my team, the judge didn't do the right thing. And that's not always correct, and I believe that the instinct of the reason people feel that way and have forgotten the unique role that courts play in neutrally applying the law in our system is because of the lack of civics education that we have due to funding cuts in education nationwide. And that lack of civics education has led to a mistrust of really all 3 branches of government. That's why, as part of my campaign, upon learning that a big part of what I have to do is educate people about our court system. You're gonna have dozens of judges on your ballot, and I hate to say, I've learned that most people don't know the difference between a judge in Court A, a judge in Court B, and what those courts do. And so I have made it a point to begin education initiatives. Even though they can't vote for me as part of my campaign, I'm going to high schools and giving free civics lessons to any high school government class that will have me, because we start with the young generation, because one day they will fill these roles.
Thank you. I've said for several years now that we need to pay civics, history teachers out of, nosebleed money. We really do. Let's go on to the next question, and we'll open it up to the audience for questions, so get your questions ready. When the law is clear, but the outcome is difficult, what principles guide how you carry out your duty, or will guide how you carry out your duty? So when things aren't clear and the outcome is difficult, what will you do to guide your decisions? We're going to start with Holly.
So I think what I heard,
Your microphone.
okay, so I think what I heard, the question was, if the law is clear, but the outcome is very difficult, and there will be a public outcry, potentially. If the judge makes the decision that's consistent with the rule of law, what will I do? Well, I think the way that question is framed, there's no question. I think the primary job of a judge is to make decisions consistent with the rule of law, and that's what makes it so hard, is when it is something that people may object to and where you may receive public criticism. But a judge is not a representative. A judge is tasked, even though we have partisan elections, a judge is tasked with standing up for the rule of law and our constitutional rights. And that is absolutely the most important job that a judge has. Now, that being said, in many cases, The law may be clear, but the facts may be muddy. And in those cases, I think it's really important that judges be willing to dig down into the record and get to the truth in cases. And also, where science is a factor, to consider the current science that's reflected in the record. So those things can come into play in decision making. And I think it's very important that where the law and the facts are unclear, that judges do look at the ultimate impact of their decisions on our society and what the legislature may have truly intended in passing a law. But where the law is clear and the facts are clear and the judge is forced to make a decision they're uncomfortable with, I think they have to do it.
I agree with Holly. The law is the law. We have to respect it. We take an oath. But to the extent that the law is what it is and we make our decision based on that, there's generally discretion. There's discretion about how things are handled in a criminal context. So the Attorney General of the state of Texas, which I'm running for, does not have tremendous criminal authority. But I do have a tremendous criminal background. And whether it's criminal or civil case, there's going to be discretion. And we are all human beings. And you have to understand the basics of human dignity. And everyone should be treated in that manner. I recently was profiled for Attorney Law Magazine. I was selected Attorney of the Month. And I talked about when I was a prosecutor and I prosecuted cases. And I understood that, and I was quite unique in my office. I understood that individuals needed to be punished, whether they could have the potential to, say, hypothetically do 10 years in jail. But if a 3-year sentence was sufficient to keep, and I was confident that they were not going to recidivate, then that's what I pushed for. I wasn't looking to hang them high. And so you have to have a basic sense of compassion, understand the dignity of people, and understand that people make mistakes. When you have that discretion, you should consider that.
I'll echo what Holly Taylor and Tony Box said, that you have got to follow the law. We, as attorneys, as judges, we take an oath that we will follow the law and follow the Constitution. And again, the caveat is, there is a lot of flexibility within the law. I serve on the Court of Appeals. We review cases to make sure that the law was followed in the lower courts. And there have been a couple of cases where, the law says this, and based on the facts, we could go either way on our decision. And I'll talk with my attorneys and say, what is the most just outcome? What is the most, and are we following the law, and can we get the most just outcome? And that's what we'll do. And then of course there are cases where we absolutely have no discretion. But again, the law gives us the opportunity. So we follow the law. We absolutely follow the law. But also, if a judge is not willing to be flexible with their rulings, we would not have had Brown versus Board of Education. We would not have had Roe v. Wade. We would not have had Obergefell. And so you also have to have judges who are willing to say, this law is wrong. Absolutely, it is discriminatory. It is a violation of civil rights. And so you have to have judges who have that strength of character, but also who generally will absolutely follow the law, because that inspires confidence in the court, and it inspires confidence for litigators who are becoming before that court, that they understand this judge follows the law, but also this judge is very just.
So it's been said 3 times now. I'm going to say it a 4th. That in this scenario that was put before us, when the law has a very clear answer on the facts before the court, but the judge may personally disagree or feel some type of way about faithfully applying the law in that case, it is the judge's duty to faithfully apply the law, even if it is against that judge's personal belief on what the policy should be in that circumstance. One thing I will say is that as a justice on the 5th Court of Appeals, I'm committed to maintaining the absence of the appearance of impropriety. If I ever feel that I cannot faithfully apply the law to the facts before me, I will not hesitate to recuse myself. But I have experience in making difficult decisions in judicial chambers. I've never been a judge before. Immediately after law school, I had the privilege of clerking for a federal judge where I helped her write her decisions and faithfully apply the law to the facts. What I don't talk about a lot with people is, I identify with one political party, and the judge I clerked for identified with another political party, was appointed by a president from the other party. In our individual capacities as judge and law clerk, we had raucous political debates come election season. But when we sat down and we consulted about how the law should be applied in an individual case, I cannot think of a single time that we did not meet eye to eye. I say that because the judge I clerked for, I believe, was a judge who faithfully applied the rule of law, even if she did not personally agree with the policy behind that. And as a law clerk, I felt I did the same, and I commit to doing the same as your next justice on the Fifth Court of Appeals.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to open it up for folks in the audience who might have a question for these candidates. Don't be shy. I do see one person. We'll have a mic for you. Could you come?
Hi, my name is Tracy Toomer, and I just wanted to take the last question and put it into a behavioral question so that I can hear you tell me about a time when you actually did. So if you would be so kind, I couldn't hear all of it, but I know it was saying when it was difficult. I couldn't have that question, but let's put it in a behavioral so I can get an actual example of when you demonstrated that behavior and had that political courage for your constituents. On that last question that you had.
Okay, hey guys, so did you hear that? So tell me about a time, one of those behavioral questions, where the law might have been correct. It's on the books. I want to say, but you felt something different. I'm changing it a little bit.
That's okay.
Okay? But you felt something different should happen, or would happen, or should, has this happened to you first of all? And if it does, what will you do?
What did you do?
What did you do? Gotcha.
So I'm not currently a judge, but I I'm not currently a judge, so I'm going to speak from my last few years working as the director of the Public Integrity and Complex Crimes Division at the Travis County District Attorney's Office, working with our Conviction Integrity Unit. We were tasked with, when someone like the Innocence Project brought us a case and said, can you evaluate this case? Can you do the research? We're researching it, we think this person deserves a new trial or they're innocent, and we looked into it. And one of the cases that we looked into, and I think I mentioned earlier that there were multiple cases that we found that the person was innocent. There were many more that we found the person was guilty when we went through this process. But in this particular case, it was brought to us as an unjust sentencing case. And this was a case where a man who was at the time homeless had been starving, and he went into a grocery store and he stole a tuna salad sandwich on sourdough bread. I remember this distinctly because I liked that sandwich from that store. He stole it because he was starving, and he went out into the parking lot, and he was chased outside by a security guard, and he waved a little pocket knife at the guy from about 20 feet away. And he was charged with aggravated robbery. He was tried. The attorney from our office, this was not me, asked for the maximum sentence. He was found guilty, and he was sentenced to 65 years in prison for that. And we were horrified by this when we began to evaluate it. Since then, this gentleman has become a trustee and has founded a prison ministry. And he's providing guidance and Christian ministry to other prisoners. And other prisoners offered, and people that were preachers that went to the prison to help inmates wrote letters of attestation for this gentleman about how wonderful a person he was and how he had completely turned his life around and inspired all these other prisoners. And we wanted to help this man. We wanted to help him so badly, but we could find nothing in Texas law that allowed us to do it, because technically the crime that he committed satisfied the requirements for aggravated robbery because he had a knife and he had stolen the sandwich. And we just racked our brains, but we could come up with nothing. And we were tempted to file something and make an argument that wasn't truly based on the rule of law, that was based on how we felt about the case. But we didn't. We didn't because we have to follow the rule of law, but also because when you practice in a court and when you represent the public in these decisions, you have to have credibility with the court and with other lawyers and with the public. And when you make a misrepresentation about what the law allowed you to do, then you will lose credit with those people who understand the law. And in the end, we did not find a way to help this gentleman. They may have since found something in the law that allowed them to help. But other than receiving clemency of some kind from the governor, we just could not find a way to address it under the law that is written in Texas. Now, I personally think that law should be changed, but I know that's not my job. I can't do it. So it was a troubling case. It was very troubling. But there's an example of where we were really torn, but we had to follow the law.
Yeah, I would. Very briefly, it's a story very similar to the one Holly told, but with a different outcome. When I was a prosecutor, I also led the conviction at Civic. We found out a guy who we believe was innocent. Never been done before. The Attorney General said we couldn't do it. We filed a motion on his behalf for a new trial. Years later, tremendous litigation, fighting with the Attorney General. Lamar Johnson's good gentleman, completely innocent, completely exonerated. He's free today. There was a 60-minute special. He never would have done that. He never would be out if it wasn't for myself, the Innocence Project, and many other people who went to bat for him. And so that's an example I can share.
Okay, so for sake of time, we will have two folks answer the question. Are there additional questions to the audience?
My question is, knowing that there is a disproportionate outcome for certain persons, so go ahead and say for people that like people that go into the system, what could you do, would you do, have you done to try to address that issue? What will you do in your role should you be elected?
So there's no question that there are disproportionate outcomes and disproportionately brought into the system. So in terms of being brought into the system, it is communication with groups, with different jurisdictions, and especially where you can see the spikes of who's brought in and what the dispositions are. So it's communication with those groups. Like I said, the Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court has so much power to create access to justice groups, not just access to justice, but also there's the Council for the Judiciary to talk to judges, to have CLE and training about all types of cultural competence, adultification bias, which is horrible for Black and brown girls in the system. Doing those trainings with them and working with groups in the community to talk about, what can we do here to make a difference? But it's identifying the problem, and then it's a lot of training, and it's also modeling. And so that's what I would do.
So So, as a judge, it is somewhat difficult, particularly a judge on an appellate court, because a lot of times the appellate judge's ability to reverse lower court is constrained because there are different standards of review. And when you're talking about reviewing a criminal sentence or something along those lines, a court of appeals or court of criminal appeals is often only allowed to reverse a trial court's decision if that trial court abused its discretion. It's not just if you think they got it wrong. It had to be so unclearly wrong that they paid attention and frankly ignored the law. However, I too am not insensitive to the disparate impacts and disproportionate outcomes to individuals. Something that I think the public does not understand about judging, and again, I've never been a judge, but I've worked for a judge. Judging is very isolating because judges have to, they can't maintain ongoing relationships with parties or attorneys who appear in front of them because they can't give the appearance of impropriety. Sometimes, however, because of that isolation, I think it's easy to lose sight of the people behind the papers that the judges see. And I am committed to looking beyond the papers to the circumstances that all of those individuals bring to the court and their lived experiences and how those lived experiences apply to the law and the appropriate standards that I am able to apply. We talk about disproportionate outcomes. You know, I am a white man in America. I have privileges. I will never know what it is like to live as a black or brown person in America or a female in America. And that was, I've always known that, but it was really brought home when I adopted my two daughters, who are two beautiful Latina girls. They want for nothing. They have been adopted into a house that has all the privilege that I always had, but I can already tell that what they're living, the experience they're living outside of the home is not the same experience I lived. And as much as we tried to shield them from that, they're still experiencing it in the world. And so, just as much as that resonates with me as their father, it's going to resonate with me as a judge, knowing that the individuals who appear before me have not had the same lived experience. I must look at all of the circumstances under the appropriate standard of review. Again, sometimes as an appellate judge, it's out of my hands, but I must account for all of the facts, including what the lived experience of the individuals that come to the court.
I'm going to break the rules for just a minute and just offer one more little thought in response to your question. And that is that the Court of Criminal Appeals, like the Texas Supreme Court, has some special roles that it plays, not just in deciding cases. And the Court of Criminal Appeals makes rules that apply to the trial courts and appellate courts in Texas. It also administers a large fund for grants that it can give for education in the community. And Texas law does provide for things like diversion programs. And also there is space within Texas law for restorative justice programs. And there are some wonderful programs that are being piloted by certain counties around the state that have been extremely successful, for example, in diverting the school-to-prison pipeline, in offering social services and assistance to communities, and helping to alleviate some of the problems that you talked about. There's also the possibility under Texas law, when people do manage to successfully complete a diversion program like that, to get their record expunged, and that allows them to start anew in their lives. All of these things are permissible and allowed under Texas law, and I believe that the Court of Criminal Appeals could do more to educate people on the opportunities that are out there and to facilitate the ability of our communities around the state to use these innovative programs to try to address the systemic inequities in the criminal justice system.
All right. We have one more question.
Yeah.
One more for the AD. What laws do you have in mind for
there's a lot of, as you said. So one of them, the federal government has, there's a law that for many years was a model for the country, and that is the Texas Dream Act, where people who were dreamers could go to school and state tuition. So the federal government and Ken Paxton, the current Attorney General, got together and they basically fought a lawsuit, got rid of that law. To the extent that when I become Attorney General, we're going to withdraw from that lawsuit and the Texas Dream Act will be in effect again.
Okay, thank you. This may be a question for Mr. Box.
Yes.
About voter election integrity. And I know that our current Attorney General challenged the results of the 2020 election. And so coming up with the midterm coming up, you're gonna be in office now, but after that, what would your plan be to help the public restore its confidence in the election process?
So I am very pro election. I want as many people to vote legally as can be, and the administration, both at the state level and the federal level, seems to be the opposite. They want as few people to vote as possible. And so yes, he challenged it. He lost in every challenge that he had. We do not have a voting fraud problem in the state of Texas. It's all an illusion. It undermines the confidence. And what would I do? I would protect the citizens who are going to vote, and I would not file frivolous lawsuits, performative political lawsuits, simply to keep people from voting. One of the things that has recently happened is the Attorney General has sued a JOLT initiative, which is an organization which registers people to vote. JOLT initiative immediately hired competent counsel, and they sued the Attorney General. And don't you know what the Attorney General did? He dropped his lawsuit immediately. When I become Attorney General, there'll be none of that. There's not going to be lawsuits against people who are trying to register people to vote. It will be support for organizations that want people to vote.
Okay, you all had some very good questions out there in the audience. Fantastic questions.
Does anybody else have a question?
One more question.
Okay.
So as appellate judges, you'll face review of felony murder convictions. Felony murder is really starting to fall out of favor because of its abuse in local district attorneys. What are your thoughts on felony murder and the application to the driver or to the guy who lent the car to the guy who committed the felony murder? It just seems to be too loosey-goosey to be applying to such a broad set of people. Sorry,
That's a loaded question, and with the caveat that it has been 14 years since I have been a prosecutor. I'm working on a legal background looking 14 years back. But what stuck out to me about your question is that felony murder is falling out of favor. Unfortunately, it started falling out of favor, but as appellate judges and judges generally, it's not up to us to decide if it falls out of favor for the state of Texas. The legislature needs to make that change. As appellate judges, what we're constrained to do is determining whether the facts that, for those aggravating factors you mentioned, the driver and all those other things, was there legally or factually sufficient evidence in the record to support the jury's finding on those things? Particularly when it's questions of fact that the jury decides, judges shouldn't step in and second guess those unless there's absolutely no evidence on something. And that does happen occasionally. But in terms of letting it fall out of favor, this is one of those things where we were asked at the beginning. It might be something we personally disagree with, but we have to defer to the legislature to take that step.
So I would kind of echo that answer. My name again is Holly Taylor. I think this question only applies to the two of us because we're going to be on courts that would handle criminal cases. I will say though that role of the court in assessing the legal sufficiency of the facts that came before the trial court is an important role for the court, and they do get to evaluate the facts. Now, if it's something where there's a factual discrepancy, they're going to defer to the fact finder, the jury. But if it's a purely legal question where the facts that are presented just don't meet the statutory definition of felony murder, then I think the appropriate thing for the court to do is to reverse that case. So there is a role for the court to play in evaluating those cases. But overall, if we don't like the felony murder statute, it is the job of the legislature to change it. Yeah.
Thank you all for those wonderful questions. We will now move into the closing statements. So, time for the closing statements. We're going to give each candidate 1 minute. 1 minute. I have my timer on. I know it's difficult because you guys have great information to share. So if we could start, let's start with Tony and go backwards. 1 minute. Thank you.
So I was in Washington, D.C. talking to, I was at a conference and I met a guy from the UK. And the gentleman said, oh, you're running for Attorney General of the state of Texas? I said, yes. He says, I know all about the Attorney General of the state of Texas. I know Ken Paxton, I know he's corrupt. So Ken Paxton's corruption is internationally known. What we need more than anything else is to restore integrity to that office. We need someone with integrity, with a record of integrity. And what I tell people is, if you want to know what a person's going to do in the office, you look at what they've done in the past. So I've lived my life in a certain way, a life of service, and that's what you can expect from me as your next Attorney General.
Thank you all again for the opportunity to visit with you. I am Maggie Ellis, running for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. I just want to say thank you. I think to Mr. Box's point, you can tell a person by the life that they've lived, and I hope that I've lived a life that would honor the role that I want to serve in. I have served for 35 years, whether it's a teacher, a volunteer in the community, and I would be grateful for any of your support. I have, of the 38 organizations that have endorsed in this race, I have received 35 of those endorsements from all over the state, including the Houston Chronicle and every ideological group, student group, attorney groups, and I would be honored to have your support as well. Thank you.
Good evening. One last time, Nicholas Palmer, running to be your next justice on the 5th Court of Appeals. When I started my comments to you this morning, I said I was passionate about two things. I won't quiz you, I'll remind you what they were: my family and the rule of law. In our partisan political environment right now, I feel like there's an effort to try to weaponize the courts. And that is what has made me step up in this cycle, is because I believe in the rule of law. And I will remain faithful to the rule of law, even if the law as is does not align with my personal policy decisions. So when you go into the ballot box on March 3rd, or better yet, when you make the plan and vote early, beginning next Monday, I ask that you consider me and vote Nicholas Palmer for Justice Place 8 on the 5th Court of Appeals.
Hi, I'm Holly Taylor, and this was one of the most amazing events that I have been to. Thank you, June. Thank you, Pamela. It's been an honor to work with you. I have told you something that when I ran for a different seat on this court in 2024, I could not talk about because I felt shame and embarrassment for my involvement in those wrongful convictions. And right now, I feel driven and passionate. I feel a calling to do this important work on this high court for criminal cases to ensure that this kind of experience doesn't happen to anyone else, and that we can help heal the cracks in the foundation of our criminal justice system. And I feel so strongly about it that we are taking our campaign on the road and going to all 254 counties in Texas to talk to communities and Texans all over the state to bring this important message about the reform that is needed in our system. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm Holly Taylor, running for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals.
Everyone, let's hear it for the candidates here tonight. And thanks to all of you for showing up. Give yourselves a hand. Wonderful. As a reminder, early voting begins February 17th. That's coming pretty quickly. So